Earlier today, Thailand and Cambodia agreed to a ceasefire after 5 days of a deadly border fight, which is great news and hopefully leads to a longer-term peace. But while the fighting has stopped, the dispute between those two nations remains and could reignite at a moment's notice. So I thought it'd be worthwhile to chat with an expert on the situation to dig into some of the underreported nuances, like a Game of Thrones-style family dynamic, which is absolutely wild, and what to keep an eye out for going forward. Today, we're joined by Lindsay Ford. Lindsay is a senior fellow at ORF America, where she leads the program on foreign policy and security. She's a leading expert on Indo-Pacific security issues with 2 decades of experience serving inside and outside of government, including at the White House and Department of Defense. You can follow Lindsay's work at ORF and LinkedIn, both of which will be in the description below. And with that, let's get to the conversation. All right, Lindsay, thank you so much for taking the time today. Really interested to get some of your takes on the Thailand-Cambodia stuff that's been transpiring last couple days here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we did get good news overnight that the two sides have agreed to an immediate ceasefire. They had both made some inclinations that they might be open to that, but it was not at all sure that they would land on one so quickly. So I think that's definitely welcome, though the implementation will be very important going forward. They've both said that they're going to have their military commanders and their defense attachés meeting in the coming days. And what we've seen is repeated disputes and flare-ups of tension around their 500-mile disputed border over the last several months. So there very well could be more, conflict in the days to come. I very much hope that this ceasefire will hold.
Now, technically, they've agreed to a ceasefire that will go into effect tomorrow, I believe. So there's still the process of having to get the word out to their military forces, and it's a scattered border, a lot of individual small units scattered across, so hopefully they get the word out there. But one question I had for you is, it seemed like as soon as this started, Cambodia was asking for international involvement. They went straight to the UN Security Council. Thailand actually came out with statements saying, no, we want to do this one-on-one. Can you break that down? Why? Why they both choose those directions?
So I think we've seen this in various instances where the stronger party in a dispute prefers a bilaterally negotiated approach. For obvious reasons, they think that they have more leverage if they negotiate bilaterally. So Thailand has an economy that's about 10 times the size of Cambodia's. They've got 4 times as many people, and they outpace the Cambodians militarily on all fronts. Cambodia is unequivocally the weaker party here, but Cambodia has the upper hand when it comes to international law, because Cambodia has taken some of these disputed areas, and in particular a temple that has been the site of numerous flare-ups of tensions over the past couple of decades. They've taken it to international court and they've won. So Cambodia believes that they have the upper hand internationally, but that is really kind of the only leverage they have. Because if they're in just a bilateral negotiation, Thailand absolutely has more political and economic leverage that it can wield over Thailand. And so Thailand would prefer to pull in other parties, believing that that will put them on a more equal standing.
Gotcha. Okay. I did see a lot talking about how, just given the size discrepancy and technological advantage difference in the militaries, that any sort of protracted fight would no doubt favor Thailand. But it sounds like that's a little bit different on the diplomatic front. Is that a fair assessment?
It is a fair assessment. I think the Thais have been frustrated for many years that the source of this dispute, again, is, as it often is, colonial maps that someone feels were drawn unfairly, and that is Thailand's stance. They believe in particular that some of the temples that now are considered to be part of Cambodia and not part of Thailand should be part of Thailand. And so they have disputed these maps for many years. But I think the two sides have over the years made efforts to figure out ways to handle this bilaterally. So they have a bilateral MOU that has to do with boundary conversations. But they haven't actually been able to ever move that to the point of demarcating a lot of disputed points along the border. That unfortunately is likely to be harder right now, because what we're also seeing play out is you are looking at two governments that are in a very weakened spot domestically. And so right now, neither side feels like they have a ton of room to make hard political concessions. So they may have a ceasefire, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to see them move towards something that would be a longer term resolution of the problem.
There was a lot of speculation early on, and I don't know that it's been clarified yet as to who fired the first shot, quote
Yeah.
unquote, right? Because it seems like one of those conflicts where if you point to Saturday, somebody else will point to Friday, and then last week, and then last month, and then what are we even doing? Would you be able to talk about, like, what would the incentive be for either one of these two sides to initiate some sort of conflict along the border? What would they be trying to accomplish? Again, not trying to say that either one did or didn't, because I still, for the life of me, can't figure that out. But what would the incentive be to initiate some sort of conflict?
I think we have to think about the incentives differently. So in some cases, what you're often looking at is the commander on the ground, and the incentives that they have in a situation where they may be facing off along the border, where neither side wants to look like they're backing down. And so I think you can see tactical escalation that may be taking place by the folks who are on the ground, but that's quite different from perhaps the political incentives that national level leaders have. So I don't think either Thailand or Cambodia at a national level has an incentive to initiate firing along the border. However, once it starts, both of them have a real incentive to not look like they're backing down. And that, of course, is the problem in so many of these situations. For Thailand, it's particularly acute right now because what we saw is after months of sort of flare-ups along the border over the spring, there was a phone call between the Thai prime minister and the former prime minister of Cambodia, in which it appeared that the Thai prime minister was essentially criticizing her own military and acquiescing to Cambodia's preferences. It created such a scandal in Thailand that it actually ended up with the Constitutional Court temporarily removing the Thai prime minister from office. So right now, the Thai government and the Thai military in particular, after that incident, cannot look like in any way they are being weak in the face of aggression along the border.
That makes a lot of sense. That connects a lot of the dots here. Now, a little more concerning when you said that it may not be, I don't know, I'm glad that it's not top-down, nationally driven to initiate some sort of conflict, but it's not all that calming to hear that it might be smaller elements, company commanders, battalion commanders, or the like, along the border deciding we're going to start an international incident. Is that, there's genuinely forces there that, it makes it seem like they might not have control of their entire military.
Well, I think in the last incident, what happened appears to have been in May, there was an incident where you saw a Cambodian soldier get killed. In the most recent incident, what you saw was it looks like a Thai soldier stepped on a landmine. And then after that, it gets real murky about what exactly happened. So in this particular situation, if you have someone who stepped on a landmine, it may not have been an intentional decision on that day by a commander. Today's going to be the day when we're going to spark something on the ground. But these are tense areas with a lot of history behind them. And I think we have to be realistic that not all militaries are necessarily trained in exactly the same way as the US military. And it can be easier oftentimes for units on the ground to make decisions that then can have national level repercussions.
Well, shifting more to the geopolitical side of this, my understanding at a high level, Thailand more closely aligned with the United States, whereas Cambodia more closely aligned maybe with China. How have those two powers kind of viewed this at this point? It doesn't seem like we've been all too involved, other than the please stop fighting. That'd be great.
Well, you do have the Chinese have called and engaged with the Thais and the Cambodians. President Trump obviously talked to the leaders of both sides. you are right. Thailand has an alliance with the United States. I think that is probably maybe less known because it doesn't get the same attention as, say, our alliance with NATO, with Japan. And the United States has, for the past maybe decade, had much tenser relationship with Cambodia than we used to. And a lot of that has centered around Cambodia's decision to construct a Ream naval base in partnership with the Chinese, which has given the Chinese essentially enhanced access in Southeast Asia in a way that really worries the United States government, in a way that obviously worries a lot of Southeast Asian neighbors. However, it gets a little murky, as things often do in Southeast Asia. It's not always so cut and dry. The US-Thai alliance has, floundered a little, to be honest, in recent years. That is largely because Thailand has had a few different coups starting in 2006, then again in 2014, that have made it harder for the United States to engage as closely with Thailand as we have in the past. The result of that is Thailand has built up a relationship with China, including on the security front, that it didn't used to have. Thailand and China now have bilateral exercises together. That didn't used to be a thing. And what we've seen in the last year in particular is the United States and Cambodia make an effort to begin to restore their relationship a little bit. I mean, I want to temper that statement, but the US Secretary of Defense in 2024 did go out, meet with the new head of the Cambodian government, and we did reestablish in the last year bilateral defense level dialogues. So these are baby steps, but I think what you've seen is Cambodia, under its new leader, Hun Manet, making a little bit of an effort to try to keep international ties and not be wholly dependent on the Chinese. And the flip side of that is you've seen the Thais a little worried about their relationship with the US and trying to think about how they can shore up their relationship with China too.
It feels like that's the story in the Pacific, whereas in Europe, the lines seem to be much more cleanly drawn. Like you're either more closely aligned with Russia or you're not, and you're looking west. It seems like everything that pops up in the Pacific is a little bit of this. Like, well, good relationship with the US, but also China and...
It's complicated. That's the simple version. But the reality is, for countries in the Pacific, and you would definitely hear this anywhere you went in Southeast Asia, is that while they very much want a close relationship with the United States, China is a geographic reality that they cannot get away from, and they have to deal with China.
So fingers crossed that this ceasefire holds and turns into some sort of stable peace. What would it take, if this were to go the other direction, what would it take for this to turn into a larger conflict than just kind of these continuous border skirmishes? Is that in the cards at all?
Skeptical that that's in the cards, to be honest with you. I don't think either Thailand or Cambodia has a desire, and Cambodia, frankly, just doesn't have the military for this to move into a broader conflict. So I think it's entirely possible, because they are not going to solve this border dispute right now, that you could see more flare-ups akin to what we just saw happen again. But it's hard for me to imagine that moving to a broader war. I would say, just to give you a comparison, we saw the flare-up with India and Pakistan in May. The risk there of a broader conflict is orders of magnitude greater than what we're talking about with Thailand and Cambodia.
That does help. I want to go back to something you mentioned a second ago. I don't know if you used the word nationalism or if I read that somewhere else, but I feel like I've heard of a rising sense of nationalism, and part of it might be tied to this conflict. There's a lot of internal migrants right now, displaced people along the border.
Yeah.
Are those things that are kind of fueling each other something worth keeping an eye on here?
So I actually think that to understand kind of how nationalism is fueling this dispute, you have to understand a little bit of what I was saying about the weakened domestic political situation that both Thailand and Cambodia are in. And that is not just political, it is personal. in this instance. There's a little bit of this story is almost Southeast Asian Game of Thrones, is how you need to kind of understand it. So the current Cambodian prime minister is the son of their former leader, Hun Sen, who is something of a Cambodian strongman, really eliminated a lot of the other democratic parties in Cambodia, finally stepped down, put his son in power. His son, educated at West Point, very sophisticated, but doesn't necessarily have kind of the sense of political savvy and deep patronage networks that his father built up over years. So you have a father who hasn't actually exited stage left yet in Cambodia, and very much is trying to make sure that his son can sustain his political legacy. So for Cambodia, that's a little bit of a fraught moment, that kind of transition, where nationalism plays very well, because it allows Hun Manet to look like a strong leader, which he needs to in order to sustain his power and build up his position as the new Cambodian leader. In Thailand, you kind of have a similar situation where you have a Thai king who was on the throne for decades. When he died, his son became the king. His son does not have the same kind of reverence among the Thai people. His son is a little bit more of an eclectic character than his father. And that has created concerns for the conservative Thai establishment, who worry about their hold on power. And this has been the situation for decades. And what has happened is you have seen the former Prime Minister Thaksin, who took power kind of as like a populist, relating to the people, and was watering down the conservative establishment's power. So the military had a coup in 2006. Then what happened was his sister ran and won. So we saw her in power from 2011 to 2014. Again, the Thai conservative establishment becomes very worried about what this means for their own position and their own power. So we saw her accused of corruption in much the same way as her father was. And then eventually you see another coup happen. So then we finally move again to elections. And we have now a progressive, young, very democratic party that wins in Thailand in 2023. Very exciting idea of generational change. Well, what happens? Now you see the conservative establishment, again, very worried, but this time they actually join forces with the former PM Thaksin, who they hate, in this sort of unholy alliance that they come together. And Thaksin's daughter, who was the PM that I mentioned in June, has the phone call with Hun Sen. She takes power. So now she, again, has been pulled out. We have a caretaker government in Thailand. And now you have deep animosity between the Cambodian leadership and the Shinawatra clan in Thailand. And this is all about really who is in power, and you have families that do not want to let go of the power that they've had, and you have conservative establishments in Thailand very much associated with the king and with the army that do not want to lose long entrenched positions of power. So the nationalism is there, but it is very much personal as much as it is political.
Sounds pretty straightforward. Yeah, I think I got it all first time around. My God. Wow, that's okay. I imagine folks will probably go back and listen to that one 2 or 3 times to try to understand it. That is crazy.
It is a little wild, right? I think we think sometimes in the United States, we have this crazy, boisterous political system, and we do, but we forget that other countries really have, pretty wild politics as well, that oftentimes are familial. And that is the case here in Southeast Asia, where politics is tied up with family, and that makes it really complicated.
Well, ceasefire is good then. And in terms of the United States statements, it looked like we were really trying to walk a line. I didn't see any blaming or any condemnation. It was very much we would like peace to prevail. Is it safe to assume that that's probably the U.S. view on this conflict right now, is just stop fighting, and not that we're necessarily rooting for a group or a side over the other?
Yeah, it is absolutely the case that I think the U.S. would just prefer for both sides to back off, peace to prevail, and you don't have any more fighting along the border. I think that may be a little bit of a tough pill to swallow for Thailand, if I'm being honest, because Thailand is a U.S. ally. Cambodia is a country who has had very fraught relationship with the United States for the last several years. And so I think the more neutral position that the U.S. is taking probably doesn't feel great for Thailand. While it is the right choice for us to be making, having the U.S. on a little bit of both sides should handle this well, may not be exactly what the Thais want to hear. I think what's going to be really interesting to watch is whether Cambodia plays what comes next in the same way that we kind of saw Pakistan play the aftermath of the India-Pakistan crisis, where Pakistan gave a lot of credit to President Trump for solving the crisis. Huge kudos, nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize. And what happened? We have seen Pakistan really restore what had been a very tense relationship with the United States, have visits, come over. They just had their deputy prime minister here. What we've seen in this case, the Cambodians have again been giving a lot of credit to President Trump for how he has handled the mediation. They've said they'd be happy for the U.S. to mediate. So let's see if the Cambodians use this aftermath of the crisis to actually try to improve the relationship with the United States as well, because they've seen that that's a play that could work.
Oh, all right. This is my speculation, not Lindsay's, but if we see another conflict flare up and then one of the sides come and praise President Trump and now they're on better terms with the United States, maybe that's a trend. Maybe we see other countries decide that's the way to get back in the U.S. good graces. Again, my complete speculation.
Well, it's just interesting that I think in both of these past two crises, the party who was more interested in having the United States very engaged and involved was not just the weaker party, but also the party who typically didn't have that good of a relationship with the United States. Whereas the flip side is the parties who were much closer to the United States, India, now Thailand, may walk away feeling that the aftermath of that crisis actually left that relationship in a little bit of a more sour place than where it was at the beginning.
It's interesting. Well, it's positive that we're at a place of a ceasefire, and hopefully that holds, but I think what I'm kind of gathering is there's still a lot to be done here, and between the two countries and with the United States and China as well. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on this whole area. Lindsay, thank you so much for taking the time to walk through all this. Where's a good place for people to follow your work?
Yeah, absolutely. You can see me at ORF America, and you can look for me on LinkedIn as well.
Sounds good. We'll have those links in the description below. Lindsay, thank you so much again. Really appreciate it.
Great to talk to you.
So thank you again so much to Lindsay for taking the time. This is a good example of one of those conversations where I didn't know what I didn't know until we started talking. Of course, there's so much more depth and nuance to these topics than you can get in a short video here on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, or even short article in kind of the mainstream news here in the United States. So incredible resource. So happy Lindsay took the time to explain some of that to us. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.